Hi, this is Jay from paulpolito.com, and welcome to the next installment in our screencast series about devices, Linux file system, and file system hierarchy standard. 104.7 Find system files and place files in the correct location, Part 1. To find and place a file in the correct location on your system, you first have to know a little bit about the standard directory structure of the Linux file system hierarchy standard, or FHS. Although we already discussed FHS in an earlier screencast, we will repeat it here again because, according to the objectives for the LPI exam, the candidate should be thoroughly familiar with the file system hierarchy standard. After this screencast, you really should know FHS inside and out. FHS. The file system hierarchy standard, also called FHS for short, defines the main directories and their contents in Linux operating systems. By standardizing the directory structure of the file system, programs and users can locate existing files and application directories on any Linux system more easily. Now let's talk about the structure of the FHS in more detail. The root file system. / The root file system contains the entire Linux file system. So, if you would install a Linux system with only one partition on the disk, then all of your Linux system directories would be located under the root file system, which is also called /. If the root file system is located on a separate disk partition, the following directories have to be included in the root file system to ensure the continued functionality of the Linux system. /bin. /bin contains the basic system programs that are needed to boot the system, such as the mount program. /dev. /dev contains essential device files which the kernel needs to address physical devices. These files are needed to mount things like partitions, for example. /etc. /etc contains, among other things, the information where the partition has to be mounted. /lib. /lib contains the basic libraries needed by programs like mount to work. Also located in this directory are the subdirectory modules, which contain the kernel modules. /sbin. /sbin contains important programs that are used before the file systems are mounted. So here, for example, the program fscheck is located, which checks the consistency of the file systems. To avoid further confusion, I will explain the meaning of the /root directory at this point. The /root directory is the home directory of the system administrator, which is also called root. So we have the root directory, symbolized by a /, which represents our entire file system, and the /root directory, which is the home directory of the user root. The /root directory should also be on the root, or / partition, in case the administrator requires access to its maintenance tools in single user mode. Other directories. All directories described here may be, but don't necessarily have to be, on separate partitions. /user. All static data of the operating system that is not needed during the boot process is stored in the /user directory, which stands for Unix System Resources. /var. All variable files whose content is expected to continually change during normal operation of the system, such as logs, spool files, and temporary email files, are stored in /var. In /var, you will find at least the following subdirectories. /var log, directory for log files. /var spool, spool for tasks waiting to be processed, like print and mail queues. /var temp, temporary files to be preserved between reboots. /home, users' home directories, containing saved files, personal settings, and so forth. In general, each newly created user is automatically assigned a separate /home directory. /media, mount points for removable media, such as CD-ROM or floppy disks. The standard provides the following directories: /media floppy, /media CD-ROM, /mnt. /mnt is used for temporarily mounting file systems of all kinds. /opt. In /opt, all additional software will be installed. The packages have to be installed into a subdirectory with the following name convention: /opt package or /opt manufacturer. /srv. This directory stores data for provided services, for example, /srv www. Currently, there are no rules on how exactly the directory structure in /srv has to look. /temp. /temp offers programs to store their temporary files. The /temp directory is writable for all users. /proc. /proc is a virtual file system of the kernel that provides us with process and system relevant information in real time. /boot. This directory contains all the bootloader files needed for booting the system. The operating system kernel must either be stored in this directory or in the root directory. /boot and the 1024 cylinder problem. On older systems where LBA has not been enabled, the partition with the /boot directory must reside within the first 1024 cylinders of one of the first two hard disks of a system. In practice, you will never encounter this problem on today's computer systems, but the 1024 cylinder problem is still part of the LPI exams. Summary. The File System Hierarchy Standard, also called FHS for short, defines the main directories and their contents in Linux operating systems. In a Linux system with only one partition on the hard disk, all Linux system directories are located in the root file system, which is also called /. If the Linux root file system is located on a separate disk on its own partition, the following directories have to be included in the root file system to ensure the functionality of the system: /bin, /dev, /etc, /lib, /sbin, /root. Further Linux file system directories are /user, /var, /home, /media, /mnt, /opt, /srv, /temp, /proc, /boot. On older systems in which LBA has not been enabled, the partition with the /boot directory must reside within the first 1024 cylinders of one of the first two hard disks of a system. Study points. Explain which directories in the root file system must exist if this is on a separate partition. Explore the file system of your Linux system extensively, also taking the time to examine the subdirectories. LPI expects you to demonstrate solid knowledge of FHS and also expects you to be familiar with important subdirectories like /var log. Memorize the structure of the file system by studying the table shown in this screencast. Thanks for watching this paulpolito.com screencast about devices, Linux file system, and file system hierarchy standard. See you next time.